I went over to visit a woman who she's got a couple of children and she's not making it. She makes $7.25 an hour. She can't feed everybody. And so let's see, how can I deal with this? And she said, Reverend, what's the one thing money can't buy? Anybody know the answer to that? What? Nope. I mean, you're right, but that's not the answer she gave me. Immortality? Well, no, she didn't give me that one either. She said to me, one thing money can't buy is poverty. And she was in that. I spoke to somebody today that said when they first started working, they made 85 cents an hour for their wage. And I remember my days. November of 1969, I was 16. I made $1.25 an hour at the soda fountain, giving people ice cream and sodas at the shopping center. $1.25 an hour. Then they raised it to $1.65. We thought we were millionaires. What are we going to do with all this extra money? Well, I stand here today in a desperate plea, facing the challenge of the life of scarcity. And people who have been on the bottom end for so long, far too long. Whether we as a people believe it's possible for the richest nation in the world to provide everyone's need and ensure equal protection under the law. And not to establish some form of benevolence, but to establish justice. To establish justice. And here we are, the moment we're called. Too many people have been treated as invisible and are treated as being disposable. Most people don't advocate for the poor. Most people don't see them as a lobby. They don't see them the way the people feel they could see them. And 50% of the world faces poverty and extreme deprivation. And we look at COVID-19. 19 is just when the year it happened. And restaurant workers get $2.13 an hour. And people who are in these jobs are saying we have no more patience for that. We can't make it on that. We need more. They're entitled to more. We can no longer be denied even a raise after 12 years. No raise in the minimum wage. Did this have any intention for anybody? Did God intend for one group of people to live in inordinate wealth while others live in abject and deafening poverty? I don't think so. There are 3 people in America who are the richest people. They're the 1% of the 1%. Their name is Walton of the Walmart stores. Now, poverty is not God-ordained. Excuse me. It's human-made. Human-made because of policy. And it is defunding of our children's possibilities through public education, militarism, the war economy, distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism. It's wrong. And it is corporate sin and the result of structural sin. What does it mean to preach good news to the poor? Good news to those who've been made poor by economic exploitation. And in this America, we must address the interlocking injustices that connect with poverty. Even before, I remember there was a news article. 7 people had died from vaping. 7. Now, before COVID actually happened, 700 people were dying every year from poverty, from malnutrition. But when those 7 people died of vaping, they held press news conferences, and they made a big deal about it. Not once mentioning the 700 who died every year from malnutrition. You see, COVID sends a message. And indeed, we should be concerned about that happening. There's no question about it. But not one word from all of those legislators about the 700 who die every year from malnutrition. But those 7 who died of the vaping, well, it became a crisis beyond all levels. Well, poverty measurement is so wrong. It says there's only 34 million poor people in the nation that live below the poverty level. Well, if you make $7.25 an hour and you're at $12,800 a year, you are not, according to the government, living below the poverty level, which is absurd. Absolutely absurd. And we live today in a time when our patience is running thin. Those people matter as much or more than anybody else. And if you make that kind of money, and I've asked some of these people, I've talked to McDonald's executives, I've talked to Dollar Tree executives. Last year alone, the Dollar General stores that you all know about, they reported $1.2 trillion earnings of their stores, money that came in. $10 million of that went as a bonus to their CEO. And each employee is working below the minimum wage or at the minimum wage level. Now, how is it that that's so? When we give so much to so many at the top, that we give them breaks, we give them incentive, but it does not. Remember that phrase, trickle down theory? Well, it trickled down. It didn't seem like it come trickle down. It seemed like we're doubling down on something that doesn't happen. We must transform the political narrative. We must see ourselves in the process. You see, that's the whole problem, is that we don't see other people who are suffering as we see ourselves. That's the problem. And we don't know what to do when the rents are going higher and higher and higher, and these people can't buy sneakers for their kids. And they can't buy any medicine, and they can't take care of their children in the way that we would want to take care of our children. Well, there are many things that's facing us, and we're losing our patience over this. We're losing our patience when we watch the For the People Act. You remember that? John Lewis wrote that on his deathbed, just before he died. He called it the Freedom to Vote Act. Well, it's a little skewed. We don't have a freedom to vote. We have a right to vote. And that should never have been touched by the Supreme Court. Never. But they gutted it, and people died for that. Well, we're losing our patience just trying to keep up. We're losing our patience to say, wait a minute, we've been through a lot. Even after 700,000 people died of COVID, and many are sick, we still refuse to support universal health coverage. Why? Why won't we support universal health coverage? Why is it that some people who live near the Canadian border can't cross over and get medications, same as in America, and get them in Canada for a fraction of what they get in the United States? Why? Because there's too much money to be made, and the lobbyists, the pharmaceutical lobbyists, have stopped people from being allowed to do that. To me, that is a moral disgrace. It's a moral disgrace that people are suffering in the manner that they're suffering. And we just can't, like we think about when the distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism doesn't follow the call of their religions, especially like what I used to adhere to. Like, take the Christian text for a second. It says to all nations, when I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was naked, did you clothe me? When I was a stranger and an immigrant, undocumented, did you welcome me in? But instead, preachers are preaching false gospel of division. They use the gospel of a false form of a narrative. They say so much about what God says so little, and they say so little about what God says so much. When we see that going on right in our face, and they literally act as though they have a moral position in the world, which they do not, is to fight against women's freedoms, to be against our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, to be for tax cuts for the rich, and act as though maybe Jesus was the founding member of the NRA. We have a crisis of possibility, and justifiably we're losing our patience. And during the pandemic, we give low-wage workers to people that we call these people essential. Who's going to pick our oranges and give us our produce in our supermarkets? They're essential for our survival. Well, think about that for a minute. We call them essential, but we still aren't giving them what is essential for their survival. It made them more vulnerable. In the pandemic, they were the ones that had to go out to work. They were the first to get infected, the first to get sick, the first to die. Before COVID, they were not paid enough to build up savings to tide them over in emergencies. Yet we continue the policies that treat them as though they are expendable. We have in this country a crisis of possibilities, a crisis of civilization. I remember when I was growing up, they had a button. I couldn't believe it. It was really great. This is when Richard Nixon had very little popularity, and he was against the growers, the Cesar Chavez groups. And all it said was, Nixon eats lettuce. I thought that was interesting, think about it. Do you have enough coverage? I'm going to say no. You probably don't even know what coverage you have. And if you do, you're in the better group that has done your homework. But my guess is, why isn't that given to all people simply because they are here? I don't know. But there's a group called Moms in Appalachia. I met a few of them. They're demanding $15 an hour in West Virginia. Joe Manchin claims to be their senator. Oh, well, many of them are daughters of coal miners, wives, mothers. It's the zip code with the largest number of homeless white millennials. Homeless white millennials. Well, they're right there in our nation's capital of Washington, D.C. Think about it. There are people, the largest number of homeless are in the nation's capital. Unbelievable. There's a national call for a moral revival because people have had enough. People have lost their patience. They no longer believe that, they'll just come to their senses. Down in Alabama, some miles from where Martin Luther King Jr. and Rabbi Herschel and others walked down the center into Montgomery to marching, we want to make sure that we work together to make sure things change in the world. But, if you think about it, you just go a little bit away from that road, and you'd think that there was no such march at all, that no progress was made at all. Think about the long line of people that are struggling in every city on the food lines. Right here in Tampa, on Thanksgiving Day, I went to two of them. And these are people that are forgotten. Where do you live? I live right over here. I live right over here. I live under that bridge. Oh, it was for me. It was a very meaningful Thanksgiving. I got a chance to see people that I otherwise wouldn't have seen. I mean, in San Francisco, there's a church called Glide Memorial United Methodist Church. And for a long time, Cecil Williams was my friend who was the pastor there. He went there in 1965 to close the church. There was only 12 widows, white widows, and he was a black minister. And they said, the district superintendent, we just want you to close the church. We're going to do something else with that. Well, it turns out he transformed the church. And they were at the peak. 3,500 dinners every day were served to people in need. 3,500 every day. He had a section of several floors of the next building that they bought so that they could teach people how to do computers. There were 8 AA meetings every day that they conducted there. It was my privilege to know this man. And he sadly has died, but one very dapper man, dressed pretty well, said to me, Jack, we may not be able to march, but we're with you. Keep on fighting. Remember, I said, what did you do? And he said, well, I was a man of means. I was upward and mobile. I was making it. And then there was the healthcare crisis. I ended up on the street in the wealthiest nation of the world. Well, the politicians don't see you. Does that sound familiar? I mean, are you feeling more patience or lack thereof? I'm in a lack thereof. Wasn't it Dr. Martin Luther King who said in the speech that we all know to be the I Have a Dream speech? That wasn't the title. The title was Normalcy Never Again. He grieved over the fact that although we had dealt with the issue of race, in many, many respects, we are still dealing with the issue of race. In many, many respects. And then it was through that effort. I don't know how we did it. Call it a miracle. I don't know. We got the 13th Amendment. We got the 14th Amendment. We got equal protection under the law. The 15th Amendment guaranteeing voting rights. Saying that no state, no entity can deny people the right to vote. And with the emergence of the second Reconstruction, something else started happening. I mean, the first Reconstruction, a movement of mean-spirited began. Think about it. We moved from slavery to indentured servanthood, Jim Crow, where people were continually in debt to white owners of property. And when there was justice to be meted out, all the people in the juries were white men who owned businesses. Now imagine, you're a white male, you own businesses, and you're the one deciding the fate of a man on trial who might be a person of color. Well, there's a lot of things that we've come far, but we've got a long way to go. I believe we have a long, long way to go. Years ago, there was a man who was the governor of the state of New Jersey. And he was the president of Princeton University. And through the shenanigans of elections, he became the president. His name was Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was a racist. And he didn't like the women's issues. And he had, right there in the White House, the premier showing of The Birth of a Nation, which catapulted the KKK. He said it was one of the finest examples of the history of our nation that could ever be. Well, then on that day that we finally had enough, that we had hoped to encourage President Kennedy to have another signing of emancipation, a second one. That was the plan. It didn't happen, but that was the plan. He preached the sermon that was not, I have a dream, but normalcy never again. You see, this is where we have come. We have a long way to go. I don't know how much your patience is. My patience is running very thin. Because history says that if you do not learn from your history, you are doomed to repeat it. Remember those poor little girls in that school? In that church in Birmingham? Right after the speech, the great speech, I have a dream. A couple weeks later, they bombed that church and killed those 4 little girls who were singing before they went to Sunday school class. And this is the groundwork, I think. This is the groundwork for what has happened since. They do not say, well, we learned the lesson that we should maybe not suppress this. No, they find new ways to suppress it. Through voting blocks, through redistricting, through gerrymandering, through all kinds of ways of intimidation. I mean, they had people of color answer questions to see if they were literate enough to vote. I mean, they'll ask a person who wants to register to vote who's white, okay, what was the color of George Washington's white horse? And then a person of color, can you name the signs, the astrological signs of the Chinese calendar? Now, I mean, it's clear. But people do change. That's the good news. People do change. I mean, we all talk about Lyndon Johnson. He changed. He absolutely did change from being a segregationist to bringing about the Civil Rights Bill to become a law in 1964. He did that. And he did that before the election of 1964. Remember, I remember very vividly, I was 11 years old, and I heard a man get up there. Maybe you heard him too. His name was Barry Goldwater. And he said, extremism and the defense of liberty is no vice. I'll never forget him saying that. Because I thought, I agree with that. But his purpose in saying that was to say that white people did not have to address many of the things that have been imposed upon by people of color, or by people who were immigrants, or by people who were not just like the people that he represented. Positive polarization, they call it. A political strategy, a way to divide the country intentionally for political advantage. Well, we could go on and on about how far we've come, but how far we have to go. And I believe that we have reasons to hope. I believe that the patience has paid off. That's really what matters, is how much you're willing to endure the process, because eventually, I believe that right makes might. That people do see. I mean, look at what happened. Just a couple of people who were on that committee saw that they had to leave their party because what their party was not saying was the defense of our Constitution. That's just recent. And I'm very, very anxious, but I'm very, very hopeful for our future. I am. And I'm hopeful because people do not want to be oppressive. When you are oppressive to other people, that takes a lot of energy, much more than I'm willing to admit. And if we have experienced this kind of division, we know what it feels like. We know what we have to do. This is what's so great about Unitarian Universalists, because we have little patience for oppressing other people for no reason except for the fact that they exist. There's no such thing as an illegal alien. There's only undocumented immigrants. You can't be guilty of anything simply because you're undocumented. Somebody said that. I didn't say it. I mean, this is what we are advocating. This is what we're about. We have to name this extremism, not just call it conservatism. No, I don't even like those puny terms. You know, and let me conclude with one thing of patience. Somebody taught me this just recently. I have a lot of sisters. They're not really my sisters, but they're really my sisters. And I went to visit one of them. And I didn't realize how serious her condition was of having breast cancer. But it was serious. And I went into the hospital, and I don't know how they did it, but the nurses saw that she was depressed. So they figured they'd let a few more people in. And they let a few more people in. They let a few more people in. There's 20 people in that room. And nobody was talking. And I started talking to her, and she was very depressed. And she said, "You don't know what it's like to have this illness. You don't know what it's like to lose your hair. You don't know what it's like to have nausea from the chemotherapy and the radiation. You don't know. And you don't understand what I'm going through." Well, I didn't know what to say, and nobody else was talking. So I said to her, because I know her that well, you know, I know a lot of people that hate Christmas. I just talked to somebody this morning about how much he hates Christmas. I said, "How can you say you hate Christmas? I mean, I love Christmas. Look, I took on my robe and I got my tie and all that. You know, what do you mean you hate Christmas?" I love Christmas. Mostly because of the giving. Well, she was saying that nobody understands. So I looked at her. I could do this because she's like my sister. And I said, "Well, I'm glad I'm not here to understand." "What do you mean?" "Well, now everybody shut up because, you know, I had to open my mouth, right?" I said, "Well, I'm not here to understand what you're going through. I'm not here to, in some way, try to figure out how you got breast cancer and other people don't get it. I'm not here to figure that out. That's not my purpose at all." And she looked at me, "Then what are you here for?" "I'm here to stand with you, to share with you in your suffering. That's the only reason I'm here. Because I don't have the answers." And all these people here in the room, you know, they're breathing a little easier. Yeah, that's why we're here. Yeah, right. They didn't disagree with me. And she said, "You want to stand with me in my suffering?" "Yeah." "Now, how are you going to do that?" She said it a little more dramatically than that, but I'll use, "How the heck are you going to do that?" She didn't say any heck. "Oh, well," I said, I don't know. I said, "But if you'll excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom. I just came from somewhere. I have to go." Now, I did have to go to the bathroom, but not for the reasons people go to the bathroom. We had this all planned. There were men in the bathroom waiting for me. And they shaved my head, and I shaved their heads. And we looked like the scrawniest looking bald-headed guys you ever saw. And if anybody is upset about this, shame on you. Well, we went back in that room, and she looked at us, and we looked at her, and, you know, I said she's like my sister. She threw a plastic cup at me, you know. Well, she was saying that she really appreciated that. And we started to sing songs that we remembered. We started to laugh we started to have Christmas right there in that room. And there was I'm sure the nurse was a sergeant in some boot camp somewhere. She was strong. Like, she ran down the hall. Mind you, this room was so, it's like it was so depressing and nobody was saying anything. And then after we walked in, there was joy. There was a feeling that, wow, like we never felt before. Christmas was in that room for that moment. All of us, all 8 men who decided, it's funny, somebody said, how many women did it? None. I said, well, we didn't ask any women to do it. We wanted to do it. And so we did. She burst into tears of laughter. And we cried, we sang, and we laughed. You don't have to be in the shoes of someone that you know who's in pain at Christmas. You don't have to be in those shoes. All you have to do is have the patience to love them. Have the patience to care for them. Have the patience to be with them. And a couple of days ago, my friend wrote me a note. And it's a lot for her. Because she doesn't do that. And she said, the reports are better. It appears, she said, that remission may be on the way. It looks like it's happening. And that she was announcing to all of us, she's going to be home for Christmas. And she thanked me and the others for doing nothing, really. But she thanked us for the best Christmas that she ever had. Now, I don't know what I could give any of you for Christmas. I just don't know. But you all have given me so much. And I think it's because you love me. I really believe that with all my heart. It's a feeling I've never had, if you can understand it. Because you are now my people. And what can I give to the people who have given me so much? I don't know. Except to give you everything that I have. Because that is what Christmas is all about. I've never met anybody like you. Never. And I hope you just believe me when I say that. I've met a lot of people. And they'd do anything that I can't even believe. But there's something about you that I believe, and I don't believe in coincidences. There's something about you that says that you are now my people. And all I can say to you as we approach the day of Christmas, the celebration, I wish you the very best Christmas you possibly can have. I wish that you are with people that love you, like I love you, and that you are people that continue to be the people of giving and caring and loving. And I look over there and I see that you are. Thank you. Thank you all. And Merry Christmas to you.